today we're going to be talking about solving by using the square root. Now, we've done the very simplest case already, but we just need to be able to identify that the variable is inside like some type of perfect square. And then we're going to use the square root symbol to solve the problem. Basically, that's it. Okay. So our steps would be get the perfect square alone, take the square root plus or minus both sides, and get the variable alone. So that's pretty much it. So examples of perfect squares. Obviously, if it's just x squared, it's a perfect square. If it's a binomial squared, it's a perfect square. Now, this one right here, we need to notice that special case of that this is 2x squared and this is 7 squared. And in the middle is 2 times 2x times 7. So we need to be able to see that this is 2x minus 7 squared. So we need to be able to recognize this. So that was in our special cases video. Okay, so let's check this out. So we are going to first identify that perfect square. We do have a perfect square. Let's get it alone. And we have x squared is equal to 25. And then we take the square root of both sides and we plus or minus. So this is going to be x is equal to plus or minus 5. So our answers are 5 and negative 5. Not an ordered pair, a list of x values that will work. Okay, here our perfect square is right here, but it's not alone. So we are going to get that alone first by dividing by 3. And then we'll have x minus 2 squared is equal to 4. And now I have my perfect square alone, so I can take the square root. And so this actually gives me two situations, because this gives me x minus 2 squared is equal to a 2. And this also gives me x minus 2 squared is equal to a negative 2. So we have to identify that there's two cases involved here, okay, two things that are happening. So then we have to do both of them. So we take the square root plus or minus, and we get x minus 2 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 2. So this is, again, since we have the square root and a binomial, we're going to have x minus 2 equals a positive radical 2, and then x minus 2 equals a negative radical 2. Now, technically, you don't have to get crazy with this because you could have put plus or minus on that, but we're going to do this out. So this is going to be plus 2. So the first x is 2 plus square root of 2. The next value that we have is x is equal to 2 minus square root of 2. Now, sometimes people will just write this 2 plus or minus the square root of 2, but we need to identify that that's actually two values. Okay, the next one that we have, we're going to take the square root plus or minus, and now we see that we're going to be taking an I out. So we're going to actually, let's move this over a little bit just so that I have a little bit more room. Okay, so now we're going to have x minus 2 is equal to plus or minus, and I comes out and a radical 2, right? But now we have two things that are happening. We have x minus 2 is equal to a positive I radical 2, and x minus 2 is equal to a negative I radical 2. And so now when we solve this and we add 2, we're going to get x is equal to 2 plus I radical 2, and we're going to get add 2, we're going to get x is equal to 2 minus I radical 2. So actually, technically, you could write this 2 plus or minus I radical 2. Some people actually write it 2 plus or minus radical 2i. I'm not a fan of this because it just, the radical could absorb the I. This is the only time when I wouldn't put the value in front of the I. Okay, wow, I did not leave very much room for the next one. So, whoa, I got maybe to think about moving some of this over. No, I'm not going to. I'm just going to do it in a completely different color. So we are going to do this. We have to identify that this is 3x squared and this is 5 squared and this is 2 of them. So once we identify that, we know that this is a perfect square. 3x, always take the sign of the middle, minus 5 squared. And this makes our life way easier because we're going to take the square root plus or minus both sides. 3x minus 5 is equal to plus or minus 6. So that is 3x minus 5 equals 6, and 3x minus 5 equals negative 6. So after we solve this, by adding 5, we're going to have x is equal to 11 over 3. Oops. 11 over 3, and adding 5 here, we have 3x is equal to negative 1, and so we will get x is equal to negative 1/3. Woo! Okay, so we have our two solutions. All right, let's continue on. So this one is interesting because you see how we have x terms, but we don't, x squared terms, but we don't have any x term. So that means our x squared is our perfect square. So this, we're going to make a little note here. No x term, so x squared is the perfect square. Gosh, that's messy. Let's rewrite that because I have to, let's do it on here. No x term. Wow, what's wrong with me? Term, so x squared is the perfect square. Okay, so since x squared is a perfect square, we're going to focus on, let's move this down. What in the heck is going on? Here we go. Well, hopefully you can fast forward through that part, but whatever. Okay, so we want to get x squared on one side, so I'm going to subtract 3x squared. And I'm also going to get that constant on the other side, so I'm going to do 2 steps in one. So I'll end up with 1x squared on the left, and on the right I'm going to end up with 49, and then we're going to take the square root of both sides. So the hardest part of this problem was that you had to identify that x was your perfect square, or x squared was your perfect square. Boy, I hope I can speak through the next one. Okay, so like we just said, identifying that you have a perfect square is super important. So let's look at this one and see if we have a perfect square. These outsides, the first and last term, are perfect squares, but is the middle twice their product? So 5x times 2. So yep, the middle is twice their product. So my perfect square is going to be 5x, the middle terms, plus 2 squared. So again, the hardest part of this problem is identifying that you have a perfect square. And when you're going to look for it is when you have the x term, right? So you have 5x plus 2 is equal to plus or minus 10. And that gives us our two cases. 5x plus 2 is equal to 10. And 5x plus 2 is equal to negative 10. And we'll solve those. Subtract 2. 5x is equal to 8. Divide by 5. X is equal to 8/5. Subtract 2. 5x is equal to negative 12. Divide by 5. X is equal to negative 12 over 5. So we have our two solutions, 8 over 5 and negative 12 over 5. Okay, I hope this helped you guys. Take care.